Let me walk you through what I got done today on the shed grow setup. The main mission, getting power to the shed. First, I showed up and rented a trench digger. The plan was to dig a 65-foot trench for the 8-gauge wire that'll run electricity out here. It needs to be 18 inches deep for code, and once buried, the wire will run through conduit for protection. The digging itself wasn't too bad overall, but I did run into some huge rocks along the way. I had to dig those up by hand so I could get the trencher in there properly. With the trench dug, we moved on to the conduit. At the shed, we already had conduit installed into the concrete foundation. I added two 90-degree corners to guide the wire from the concrete into the trench. Then I laid out the 65 feet of conduit along the trench, glued it all together to make sure it was secure and watertight. At the other end, where we'll be tapping into the main electric source, I glued another 90-degree corner to bring the conduit up out of the trench. After that, I added a frost sleeve for extra protection and finished off with the junction box. Once all the conduit was in place, it was time to snake the line so we could pull the wire through. Here's where things got tricky. The snake tool wouldn't make it past the 90-degree bends on either side. So I went with an old school trick, the shop vac, a plastic bag, and some twine. I tied the twine to a small plastic bag, created suction on one side of the conduit with the shop vac, had gotten some debris out before I sent the bag through from the opposite side. Worked like a charm. Just like that, the conduit was ready for wire. From there, I tied the 18-gauge wire to the twine and pulled it through the entire run of the conduit. Once we had the wire pulled and ready outside, it was time for the next step, to head inside the shed and start prepping for power. And that's it for today. The trench is dug, laid the conduit, and the wire is run. Next up, we'll start prepping the interior, one step closer to being fully operational.